Navigating my family as an atheist with a socially anxious wife has been a roller coaster. My mom yelled, "You bring someone around who sees so many faults in us," while my wife screamed, "Let us fucking talk." Now, I wonder if my family ever liked her at all. So, some context. My wife and I recently got married. We were not interested in holding a large wedding and had postponed getting married for a while. Ultimately, we decided to sign the papers and plan a vow exchange later in the year with family, along with a nice dinner. We have been together for just over 3 years and were engaged for half that time before tying the knot. Early in our relationship, my then girlfriend realized that the frequency with which my family wanted to do things was not comfortable for her, as she is not very social and finds social gatherings stressful. She prefers staying home with our cats and only occasionally going out, and typically likes to have a few weeks of downtime before participating in any activities. She has a diagnosed anxiety disorder and religious trauma, which also contributes to her feelings when family-related issues arise. Although we are not religious, my family is, and it was not until sometime into our relationship that I had to come out to my parents as an atheist, something that I had feared for quite a while. Additionally, we hold different values, and our political beliefs differ significantly, but I had been maintaining a sort of don't talk, don't tell understanding with my family. My family has always been very close-knit, but I have definitely distanced myself over the years, even before meeting my now wife, due to life experiences that opened my eyes to many different realities, my time in college, and of course from deconverting. There was always this sense that it was safer to avoid discussing sensitive topics rather than get into lengthy debates about beliefs they disagreed with, and I always dreaded hurting my mother's feelings, which is a prevailing trend in my family that we try to avoid. I would still participate in holidays, birthdays, and other events, but I definitely preferred staying home, where I lived about an hour and a half away, and spending time alone or with friends. The first significant argument between my family and girlfriend occurred when my sister got engaged to someone she shouldn't have and moved quite a distance away to have the wedding there. Thankfully, she is no longer with that person and is in a much better place now. But at that time, she texted me about the wedding arrangements and asked if my girlfriend would consider being a bridesmaid, which she declined due to anxiety about being in front of everyone, though she appreciated the offer. However, my sister's next text asked whether I wanted my girlfriend to be included in the wedding photos, which I interpreted as a question about how serious I was about our relationship. My girlfriend felt uneasy, as the question implied that we might break up and I would not want her in those long-term photos. This led to a considerable fight, and I believe it was largely a misunderstanding, but my sister became very upset when she learned how my girlfriend felt. Eventually, my mother called, clearly upset and essentially yelling at us about it hurting my sister. It all resolved once I managed to facilitate a conversation where everyone could express their feelings and intentions, but I had to call my sister and mother separately to discuss things for hours. Ultimately, my girlfriend apologized for her misinterpretation of events and how everything unfolded. My mom and sister said some nice things afterward and urged my girlfriend not to worry about it, but they never apologized for their reaction, even though we reached a peaceful resolution. From that point, my girlfriend initially tried her best to maintain a strategy of just showing up and avoiding contentious topics to keep the peace and prevent further issues. However, as time went on, the repeated mentions of God became bothersome to her, and there were instances when issues arose that my wife had experience in, but her insights were debated or disregarded. For example, her thesis demonstrated how redlining was the cause of drastic neighborhood conditions in our city. This was mentioned when my dad inquired about why the neighborhoods varied so much in quality depending on the street or area. He dismissed her research, which hurt her feelings and made her feel as though her work was being invalidated. A couple of times, politically related topics briefly emerged, with responses from both sides hinted at but not fully debated. During this time, my girlfriend even attended church with my family on a few occasions, but neither experience went well, and to be honest, I had not realized how strange church would feel after my deconversion and how many questionable, if not problematic, aspects I had previously overlooked. Consequently, attending church with my family quickly became unfeasible, though we still had not fully explained our reasons to them. When family dinners, birthdays, or holidays were approaching, my girlfriend started feeling anxious about attending, so we decided it would be best if she did not go to as many events and simply indicated that she did not feel up to it or something similar. During this time, she unfortunately contracted a nasty bacterial infection, which sometimes made her too unwell to attend. There was at least one occasion when she came to a family dinner despite not feeling well, unaware that she had a stomach infection. She also tried to maintain a relationship with my mother through texting and updating her about our activities. However, based on prior interactions and my girlfriend's reluctance to attend all family events, my family began to feel as though she did not like them or was becoming increasingly uncomfortable around them. My family consistently expressed that she was welcome and sought to make her feel at home, Yet since my girlfriend was still operating under the mindset of trying to avoid conflict, she felt unable to bring up what made her uncomfortable and simply endured it, which increasingly became a challenge for her to sustain. I regret this, as she was doing it for my sake, whereas I believe she would have addressed these matters sooner had she felt more at liberty to do so. This leads to the next confrontation between my girlfriend and my mother. My mother expressed a desire to eventually go on a mission trip to Egypt. My wife indicated that while she thought it would be interesting to visit, she had ultimately decided she could probably never go due to how women can be treated there. She also mentioned that numerous factors needed to be considered, such as the vaccines and other preparations required for travel, and concluded that my mother should go if she felt it was safe to do so. My mother responded by stating that she was uncertain whether she could have the trip, given that she no longer trusted vaccines. This surprised me since my dad worked in the medical field and I was a science major in college. My wife replied, "Well, they are safe, so there's nothing to worry about, but you should always consult a doctor," and provided some sources. This sparked a back-and-forth discussion in which my mother articulated her concerns, including one that hinted at the controversial claim linking vaccines to autism. My wife felt obligated to refute each new claim until it escalated into a broader argument. My mother made statements like, "You just do not respect my life experience," mentioning anecdotal stories about her school psychologist friend who had attended a conference and started doubting the relationship between vaccines and autism. This conversation occurred shortly before bedtime. We eventually fell asleep but awoke to a group text from my mom at 3 a.m., expressing her feelings of disrespect and addressing various religious statements and allegations. I ultimately engaged in an extensive back-and-forth text conversation with her, leading to me revealing my atheism and sharing numerous legitimate scientific sources regarding vaccines. Eventually, I recognized the need for a sit-down conversation to address and openly discuss various issues, as my family was clueless about my wife's religious trauma and other matters that made her feel uncomfortable. We set a date, chose a neutral coffee shop for the meeting, which I regret, as it turned out to be busy and not the best setting, and met up. Unfortunately, the conversation did not go well. Initially, they were somewhat uncomfortable with our choice of location, which in some respects was understandable, but we wanted a neutral space in case discussions took a negative turn. The conversation started reasonably well. It seemed we would be heard regarding how my wife felt and where we diverged, and we believed it would be best if we all focused on avoiding potentially contentious subjects. However, when we reached the topic of religion, my wife mentioned that certain statements made at their church had turned her off, in particular ideas suggesting it is less optimal for women to work, coupled with clips from a television show that implied a gay couple was also less optimal than a traditional straight family. My parents simply responded with, "Yeah, we agree with that," which was expected, but my wife was trying to convey how being forced to attend more extreme churches and messages like that had negatively impacted her perception of the church and its adherents. She expressed a desire to not know their beliefs so we could all coexist peacefully. My wife, who is bisexual, also came out to them during this meeting. At this point, she was crying heavily while my parents continued to interject, questioning statements like, "So you just want us to change what we believe?" Or, "Well, we love people regardless of whether we agree with them," or my mother's favorite, "I think it is best not to place those sorts of burdens on other people," referring to my wife's trauma. As my wife struggled to respond amid the barrage of questions and statements accompanied by her sobs, my dad started staring at me as if to say, "This is ridiculous. Why did you bring us here for this?" And then he scoffed and laughed as if the situation was absurd. This is when my then-fiancée reached her limit, stood up, and exited the coffee shop. I did not initially follow her, a choice I deeply regret as I was merely stunned and overwhelmed. They continued to direct comments at me for another few minutes, claiming she seemed to want to prevent me from having a family. By the way, we do not want children, which is another subject my parents do not fully support. I assume they were also referencing my immediate family. I tried my best to listen and articulate my thoughts, but they were fragmented and jumbled, and I struggled to understand what had occurred. My fiancé had left, and I did not have the opportunity to consult with her to grasp the precise trigger for her departure. Eventually, I got us all to leave, expressing that I still loved them, and I went to find my fiancé. Upon speaking to her, she explained her reasons for leaving, and while I understood her perspective, I was still reeling from the entire experience. I have come to realize that during situations like this with my family, I often struggle to discern my thoughts. I grew up expecting my family to be more open and accepting of the woman I brought into my life, as I had not faced these kinds of confrontations before. Additionally, when situations become tense or confrontational, I tend to freeze and am unsure how to respond or proceed. This is an area I am actively working on improving. Some texts were exchanged afterward. My dad sort of apologized, stating the word sorry, but also included, "I do not understand why you would bring someone around who sees so many faults in us." Because of this, it has been difficult for me to fully recognize his apology. To be honest, even now, our relationship has not really improved. Although we have been around each other, we essentially pretend that nothing is wrong. My mother was better at apologizing and expressing hope for reconciliation. Tensions remained for a while but miraculously eventually subsided and improved. As Christmas approached, my wife obviously did not want to attend my family's gathering, meaning I would have to go alone, leaving her alone on Christmas morning if I did so. I soon realized this was troubling for me and ultimately unfair to her. I felt a strong need to either convince my mom to understand our perceptions from the failed conversation or explain how my dad had made mistakes so that my fiancé would be comfortable attending. After a 2-hour talk, we finally reached an understanding, and she offered my fiancé a genuine apology and plans to continue discussions to foster mutual understanding, which restored some semblance of hope. Christmas went smoothly, and life resumed to a sense of normalcy. Between then and now, we got married, and my parents did not congratulate us, which felt unusual. I attributed it to their intention to wait until our vow exchange ceremony with both families later this year. By the way, neither of our families played a role in our marriage, as we simply signed some documents. My wife's grandfather acted as a notary primarily for convenience, though he is a cool guy. At one point, we attempted to plan a more elaborate wedding, but we both realized that neither of us felt particularly excited about the idea. I was mainly doing it because it was what my family expected. Therefore, to remain true to what we desired, we handled it ourselves. Until last weekend, my wife was invited to my cousin's baby shower. She felt it was important to attend, as this cousin was someone I used to be close with and her mother had specifically reached out to extend the invitation. We understood that it would be a challenging environment for her, given that I have 6 aunts on that side of the family and many cousins. Still, she decided to give it a try. We made it clear that we planned to leave our car with my wife, so if she felt overwhelmed, she could depart, which they accepted. Leading up to the shower, she expressed increasing stress, and we ensured she had a plan in place in case she needed to leave. It turned out that my mom arranged for the guys to go axe throwing, which meant I would not be with my wife, something I wish I had considered more carefully. Nonetheless, she assured me she would be fine, and that she would let me know if she became overwhelmed and needed to exit. Eventually, I began receiving texts from her indicating that she was not enjoying herself. My aunts were loud, making it difficult for her to hear and uncomfortable for her overall. Additionally, some of their conversations felt odd to her. It was also revealed that my aunt's husband was sick and hiding in another room, information my wife would have appreciated knowing, as she is prone to illness and we have a friend currently undergoing chemotherapy. My family downplayed his symptoms, stating it was just a cold, which did not ease her concern, especially since several family members were also immunocompromised. My wife ultimately began to feel overwhelmed. Recognizing she was heading toward a panic attack, she pulled herself together enough to thank my cousin for inviting her and to congratulate her before leaving. She called me to calm down and asked where I was so she could pick me up. I informed my dad and brother as they were about to get food, so they left while I waited. Then we returned to my family's home where I could say goodbye before heading back home. They said it was fine, but then asked, "Did she tell Mom?" I replied that I did not think she had, and we also had not heard from her. My sister's boyfriend said goodbye and hugged me as I departed. I called my mother to let her know we were leaving and to explain what had happened. She simply replied, "Okay, I understand, I love you." Later, my brother texted my wife to check on her, although he did not agree that my aunt's behavior could be deemed unhealthy. My wife felt they were a bit pushy and intense and found it strange they were openly discussing circumcision while all their daughters were present. My mother did not reach out to her afterward. After we returned home and calmed down, my wife decided to reach out to my mom to explain why she had left and share that she would have appreciated a message from her checking in or a request for my aunts to be a bit quieter. My wife also realized that larger family gatherings might not suit her, so she intended to communicate this to my mom, letting her know she likely would want to skip the big family Thanksgiving. It was essential to clarify that her absence was not a reaction to anything my immediate family had done. She simply recognized that such events were not for her. She also planned to suggest joining us the following day for an informal leftovers gathering with only my immediate family, which I would likely have attended as well. However, this conversation did not go well. The purpose of this conversation was to update my mom, express my wife's feelings of being uncared for, and continue the agreement they had made about informing each other of what made them comfortable or uncomfortable. Unfortunately, my mom interrupted my wife just a few minutes into her explanation to talk about her close relationship with her sisters, emphasizing their dynamic and how they often tease one another in good fun, and claimed they could behave that way because they were so close. While this may be true, my wife may still not enjoy that environment. My mom continued to assert that they should not have to change for my wife, arguing that it would be rude or excessive to ask her sisters to tone it down or for my mom to show consideration for my wife's feelings. She indicated that my wife was focused on her cousin's event and making it about herself, saying my wife simply lacked the life experience to understand these dynamics. At this turbulent moment, my wife began to tremble, giving me the phone to hold, prompting me to interject with my own thoughts. However, my mom interrupted me as well, which only caused my wife to reach a breaking point. She began yelling at the phone I held, demanding, "Let us talk, let us speak. Son of a bitch, let him speak." Amidst her distress, she started crying and hyperventilating. At this juncture, I regretted not standing firmer to defend my wife. I did not intervene much beyond gesturing for my wife to try to calm down and attempting to steer the conversation back on track. I should have ended the call earlier when I noticed my wife was beginning to panic, but I also wanted to express my thoughts. However, my mom persisted, alleging that my wife wanted to tear the family apart, censor them, and branding her a narcissist before we concluded the call. Since then, I have had discussions regarding the incident, and my brother believes I should not have let my wife express herself as she did during that call. My dad reached out afterward, expressing a desire to talk, but he also acknowledged that he would understand if I chose not to engage. I have come to feel that we often enter these discussions with a general, fair goal in mind. Yet certain aspects of our statements are targeted, exaggerated, or misconstrued before we can fully articulate our points, resulting in chaotic exchanges that I struggle to navigate. It also dawned on me that my parents may have disliked my wife longer than they let on, potentially due to her political views and their perception of her corrupting me. This realization is perplexing to me, given that my beliefs formed before I met her. My wife feels distressed that I do not advocate for her more forcefully in the moment during these interactions, but understands that I am working on improving my confrontation skills. I have often felt hesitant about confrontation, particularly with my family. As I previously shared, we have historically made efforts to avoid causing my mother's feelings to be hurt due to her temper, although I have not lived in their home for nearly 12 years, so I am not sure how dynamics may have shifted since then. I am leaning toward the understanding that my wife should not have to see or speak with my parents unless she chooses to do so. This is what she desires at this point, and I cannot and will not force her to do anything she does not want. I will likely continue attending holidays and family events, except Christmas, as I refuse to leave my wife alone during that time, which will lead to another challenging discussion. But overall, our lives will largely remain separate. I do not believe my family's dynamics can accommodate my wife, and it seems they do not particularly like her. I can only imagine they would be fine with our divorcing. However, I will not do that, even though the possibility was raised, which truly broke my heart. My wife expressed that she wished she did not have to yell to be acknowledged but felt that it was necessary, leading to her frustration over feeling as though she is constantly creating issues. At the same time, she recognized her need to advocate for herself. She is concerned that I might eventually want a divorce, as that would allow me to reconcile with my parents, pursue a partner they approve of, and ostensibly make my life less complicated, which broke my heart. I have assured her that this is not the case. Even if we were to separate, there would be no guarantee that my life would be less tumultuous, only the certainty that she would not be part of it, which I do not want. I conveyed to my dad that I would eventually speak with him, but I am not yet prepared. I feel completely exhausted by these kinds of interactions and hate seeing my wife feel she is not worth the effort or that she does not receive the same level of care my other family members get. Do you think I have a point in this situation? Am I missing something regarding my wife's feelings, or do you believe my family is correct in claiming she demands too much and is overly critical of others, thereby causing problems? Please let me know if you have any questions for clarification, and I will be happy to answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you. Story 2. My ex reached out after 1.5 years, and I'm not desperate for her, but am I just a safety net? After being her first kiss at 16, I've transformed my life. Now she checks in, no flirtation, just random questions. Is she seeking validation or testing the waters? Before I explain everything, I hope you can enter my mind and understand my perspective. I am also seeking advice, or if anyone could read what is happening and explain to me a little bit of what they can observe. For the most part, I can view the situation objectively now, with all emotions set aside, but I would appreciate any additional input and advice on how to move forward. Context: meeting for first dating. Back in early 2020, right before quarantine, I was a sophomore in high school. I met this girl who would ultimately change my life. I was 16 male and she was 15 female at that time. We were in the same grade because I had been held back. I first direct messaged this girl on Instagram in late December and met up with her for the first time on New Year's Eve. She was interested in me from the start, and I became her first kiss that night. She was the most innocent girl, and I was surprised to find out she had never kissed anyone before. Looking back objectively, I think she lacked attention and was also a very dedicated Christian but still wanted to have a boyfriend or find someone. Over the next 2 months, we went on dates, and I played the role of a high-value guy who had the ability to attract other girls. I would leave her on delivered all day because I was at sports practice. Next thing you know, she asks me when I am going to ask her out because I had gotten into her head. At this stage, I was somewhat playing games and got her attached, making her want to lock me down. So I asked her out in February 2020 and we started dating. During quarantine, the dynamics of our relationship changed. COVID-19 went into full effect and I ended up seeing her every day. I loved being with her and she was so in love with me, but I let her do all the chasing. I would be with her 7 days a week and didn't go a day without talking to her. However, she would primarily be the one to ask me to hang out and I would show up as myself. She would always post about me and give the most meaningful gifts throughout our relationship, such as a scrapbook of all our memories with a caption in her writing describing each photo. Letters, picture frames, she gifted me all these things that had sentimental value, which later hurt me after the real breakup. Returning to quarantine in 2020, we had sex for the first time about 3 to 4 months into the relationship. She started crying that night and regretted it afterward because we had both been saving ourselves for marriage. She expressed that she wanted God to be the center of our relationship and said that we compromised that, stating we should not have done it. She broke up with me. In the next 5 days, she was house-sitting and told me that she was crying every moment of the day because she loved me so much and didn't want to lose me. I told her that I missed her too and that we could change things moving forward. We ended up getting back together and dating again. We didn't have sex for about a month, after which it was pretty much every day for the remainder of the relationship. She felt safe with me and believed we would get married. She would always want to read the Bible and go to church, and I would occasionally get annoyed because it felt excessive. As a Christian, I personally believe that my own relationship with God is the most important. For her, she wanted to read the Bible every single night and attend church whenever it was offered. Our differing philosophies regarding how we approached our faith caused me genuine annoyance, and I gradually became unpleasant to be around. You could hear it in my tone that I was becoming irritated. This annoyed tone began to translate into my overall behavior toward her, and I started to take her for granted. During the remainder of the relationship, we broke up 3 or 4 more times over trivial matters, arguments, or other minor issues, because I was immature and did not know how to act in a relationship as a man. Each time we would get back together within a week. In April 2022, the last of these breakups occurred. She came over and it was such a minor argument, but I think she simply got tired of having these small disputes and asked me if I even wanted to be with her anymore. I decided to be a tough guy and told her no, not really. She left my house that day and we went no contact for a few days. Post-breakup, during the relationship, I had become quite pudgy. I am 5 feet 11 inches tall and weighed 155 pounds normally before the relationship. During the relationship, I became comfortable and gained weight, reaching a peak of 195 pounds. I do not remember why, but towards the end of the relationship, I began to get back into shape a bit. Anyway, about a week went by, and I realized that this game of getting back together after a week did not happen this time. I started to become anxious, and then I began to freak out on my own time because she was serious this time. She ended up texting me, but this time she said she missed me, and then I responded that I missed her too. She then stated that we could not get back together at that moment. This cycle repeated over the next year and a half, feeling like it happened over 100 times. Sometimes it would take longer for her to reach out, but she never let me enter a true no-contact state. She loved me and still cared for me but did not want to get back together. She simply wanted to know I was still there. I understood what was happening and knew I should go no contact, but whenever I did, she would break it with no intent of rekindling the relationship. Then I would go no contact again, and again she would reach out to check on me, to which I always responded. She then got what she wanted, which was validation from the fact that I was still present, that I hadn't found a girlfriend or something similar. She would give me a false sense of hope and unintentionally drive me mad. Some days I would be fine, and she would be sweet and genuine as she always had been. Then a few times I had had enough of her behavior and broke character. I would begin discussing how I could change, reminiscing about old memories, crying and begging. Then again she would say we shouldn't be doing this. I essentially scared her because it was not what she wanted anymore. She also never wanted to let go, but it was easier for her because she was now the one in power. I got a taste of my own medicine. During this time, she occupied my thoughts 24/7. I would think of every possible way to fix things, and all it accomplished was causing me pain, as whenever I devised a solution in my mind, it did not go as planned and it devastated me. For the most part, I would cry every day. I became angry but channeled my anger and sadness into becoming the best version of myself. I worked out 7 days a week to get as shredded as possible. I took my diet too far and went down to 140 pounds while being shredded. I also attended community college for a year, working hard to gain admission to my dream school, which was the University of Southern California. So after a year and a half, just before starting USC in the fall, I saw her again. I was driving my nice car, shredded, and on my way to my dream school. I truly created value. However, by the time this happened, her attraction to me was so low because I had begged and pleaded and no longer represented the man I once was. This was about a year and a half after the breakup in summer 2023. I will say I always worked out and planned to attend USC, but about 75% of my motivation was due to her. Ultimately, I believed I had become a better person, regardless of whether my motivation stemmed from within or from someone else. I felt like a completely new person after that, and I viewed life entirely differently. What makes me feel somewhat sad is that she never dated, never drank, or did anything during that time. She maintained all her values as a sweet Christian girl, repurifying for marriage, working, and even became a more ardent Christian during that time. She went on a mission trip to Africa and had such good intentions. She dedicated everything to God, which is how it should be for me. All the while, I was sitting there crying, being with many girls during that period, getting in great shape, making money, and attending my dream school. I was glad all that occurred, but it made me respect her so much more because she had a purpose in her life. When I was with her, I also grew closer to God but slowly drifted away after our breakup. She then got a boyfriend about a year and a half after the breakup, summer 2023, right before I actually went to USC on campus, and I had a final breakdown in tears. At that point, I had largely moved on, but when she got a boyfriend, it forced one last wave of tears from me because there was no longer any of her testing me or checking up on me. I asked her if they had sex yet, and she said no because she was saving herself again, which hurt more than if she had just done it. She just never did anything wrong in this situation. Time at USC, now this is August 2023. I pledged a fraternity and ended up dropping toward the end. I made a lot of friends and my life consisted of attending class, drinking 4 days a week, and visiting my friends' fraternities because I am a very social person and still know many people. At this point, I was genuinely over her and wanted the best for her regardless. While it was not as frequent, I would still receive messages from her, and she started asking me random questions all the time, such as if I had sex after we broke up or if I wanted a pet for my apartment, etc. I responded to her, but not from a place of neediness or desperation. A month or two would pass between each interaction and I never questioned it. I would simply respond and move on. While I still occasionally thought about her and would check her Instagram and whatever else I followed her on, I did not feel the emotions I used to. However, I do still have thoughts about her occasionally, but only about once or twice a month. At USC, I proceeded to get distracted during my first year and ended up being with 30 girls over the course of a year. I had a certain charm that made girls obsess over me. I felt guilty for doing this because I just didn't feel the same way about them. Girls would cry to me, write about me, and share their feelings, claiming they couldn't understand me. I just would never commit to anything because of the theory of first love. I didn't believe it until I experienced it, but every girl I interacted with reminded me of my ex. Whenever they did something my ex wouldn't do, it became unattractive to me. It wasn't that I wanted my ex back, it was that she set the standard. While some of these girls were stunning, I still didn't care. I couldn't see myself with them seriously. Yet my ex continued to check on me without saying anything like, "I miss you." She would call me from a no-caller ID and then deny it, even though I thought it was her, as only she would do that back in the day. Long story short, I maintained a similar lifestyle today, only calmer and more focused on my career. Present day, almost 3 years later, a year and a half post-breakup, and about a year and a couple of months after she has been dating that guy, I am now 21 and she is now 20. Ironically, a week or two before our anniversary in February 2025, she breaks 6 months of no contact by having her friend ask me a question about some random topic. I found it odd because I hadn't spoken to her friend, female, 20, since high school, so I immediately found it suspicious. After speaking with her friend, she said nothing regarding my ex. She was simply asking for advice. Later that day, I noticed on the friend's story that they were together, which I found amusing because I knew my ex had set that up or wanted to hear my voice indirectly. Again, I moved on. She then ramped up the no-caller ID calls, then texted me saying she needed help with financial matters or whatever she could think of. All these were things she could easily search online. She once asked me what net present value was via text. Gradually, we began talking without any romantic feelings involved. Throughout all the time apart, she seemed to have regained respect for me. We ended up speaking on the phone while I helped her with homework, and I never once brought up the past or anything. I caught her up on my life and listened to hers. She still does not know I have been with any girls or what I have become. I shared pretty much the truth in a way that painted a good picture of myself because I have changed now. I'd rather keep that past to myself. I didn't even know if she still had a boyfriend. Just being a friend, well, she also never mentioned anything about the past, not her boyfriend, or anything about us previously. Before I knew it, I found out that she and her boyfriend broke up. I was a bit surprised because the guy seemed decent, but I suppose he direct messaged another girl and she broke up with him. Additionally, I used to see that they were planning wedding Pinterest boards, so I assumed it was very serious. Regardless, we ended up meeting for coffee. We caught up in person, had good, genuine conversations, and she told me all about church, going to the gym, and more. There was no mention of the past from either of us, and then she also revealed that all those no-caller IDs were her laughing. We met up for around 2 hours. It wasn't awkward at all, and I said I had to leave. If I had to describe her demeanor during our interaction, I would say it felt like she was just meeting up with me out of curiosity, with no flirty behavior. She is generally not a very flirty person. She seemed neither overly excited to see me nor was it a romantic reunion. It was simply a normal interaction between friends. I teased her a few times, but nothing extreme. After the meetup, I didn't think much of it. I have completely shed any neediness since I have my own life and goals now. She ended up contacting me in the last month, probably about once or twice a week, asking me for help with various things, homework or otherwise. Most recently, she had a project where she needed to interview a specific ethnicity of people and asked if I knew anyone. I said yes and connected her. Now she mentioned that her group will give gift cards to participants in the survey and wanted to give them to me to distribute among my friends. This is where things are at today, and she actually just texted me as I am writing this that she might need one more because her group cannot find one more person laughing. Regardless, I do not feel needy toward it. I am unsure of what is happening. I do know that I would likely say yes to getting back together in the future, but only as if it were something completely new. I also do not mind if it doesn't work out either, as I genuinely want the best for her. I am not overthinking it too much, to be honest. However, objectively, I can see that it resembles the past, except I do not have a negative reaction toward it now. I have been positive and enjoyable to be around again. I am not stressed or needy. I remain confused as to why she consistently chooses to seek my help, but I do not react negatively. With that information, I still would prefer to be with her in the future and feel that it could work out, but I do not know how to pursue it from here. This is why I need advice and for people to tell me what they observe. Right now, my plan is to continue focusing on my life, being happy, and working towards my goals. If she chooses to show romantic interest again, we can take it from there and create something new. Who knows, maybe I will end up not being interested. The only reason I would consider any of this is that she never did anything wrong or hurt me. I do not believe she ever hurt me. I hurt myself by becoming complacent and needy. Describing her interest level is somewhat challenging as it sits in the middle of what it has been in the past. She is not obsessed, not viewing me as a needy person. She simply appears present, testing things again, perhaps seeking validation. The reason I think it might work again is that her social life largely revolves around church and work. She commutes to school, is not very involved, and does not go out much. While it is possible she could be using me strictly for validation, I doubt it. Even if that is the case, I believe I would not be too affected. I hope it is not, because it would be lovely to start over with her. However, I do recognize she is not the only girl in the world and there may be someone better. I do not want to dive in and start asking her to meet more often if she is merely seeking validation. I do not want to repeat the same mistakes as before. In my mind, I believe that she will return after enough of her testing. However, I am uncertain. Summary. We began dating in early 2020 when I was 16 and she was 15. Our relationship underwent multiple breakups and reconciliations for trivial reasons. After our final breakup in April 2022, I focused on improving myself, getting in shape, and achieving personal goals. She kept playing games with me for 1.5 years after the breakup before starting a new relationship for another 1.5 years. During and after her new relationship, she intermittently reached out, asking for help with schoolwork and posing random questions. We met up once, but there was no mention of the past, and the interaction felt like a normal, friendly catch-up. Currently, she has been texting me occasionally, but I am unsure if she is still interested romantically or merely seeking validation. I am not desperate to reconcile, but would consider it if the opportunity arose, as I respect her and believe we could start anew. Questions. What can you observe from her current behavior that might help me determine whether to pursue her or not? What patterns can you identify in either me or her that would suggest the possibility of success or failure? If there are positive signs, how can I transition this relationship from infrequent communication to going on a date again without rushing things? Keep in mind that she has yet to display any flirty or romantic behavior. She just keeps returning. Story 3. My friend thinks I'm crazy because I kissed my best friend at a party. Sure, he said he wanted to hook up with someone else right after, but it felt like one of the best 45 minutes of my life. Am I insane for not wanting to cut him off? So back in February, a 22-year-old female, attended a cocktail party. It was hosted at a friend's house and we had planned it months in advance. I was genuinely excited because alcoholic beverages, friends, music, and food are my favorite ways to spend time. If you tell me we are going to spend a whole night in a backyard with some beer, a fire pit, and good company, I will drop everything I am doing. But that is beside the point. This gathering had been in the works for a while, and my friend, whom I will refer to as Sarah, a 27-year-old female, and I were doing everything within our power to make it happen. She is not a heavy drinker, and I promised to help her have a great time that night. She calls me the party girl of our friend group, and throughout this year I have been taking her out and showing her my party girl ways. In total, there were only 5 of us attending, and one person was going to leave very early due to having to work early the next morning. It was a small gathering, but fun nonetheless. Our friend Rick, a 20-year-old male, was going, and we were all genuinely excited to have him join us. Rick and I have known of each other's existence for about 3 years, but we have only hung out a handful of times and those encounters were brief. He was friends with my best friend Erin, a 21-year-old female, before he became truly friends with me. Rick and I connected back in late August. We quickly became best friends. I am unsure what caused this sudden change, but it felt as though we had known each other for years. We began going to lunch frequently and embarked on various adventures. He is sometimes a challenging person to convince to leave the house, so it was a great boost for my self-esteem to ask him to do something and not have him cancel. He is infamous for making plans and then dropping out at the last minute. It is somewhat annoying, but I have never truly had an issue with it. We have attended events together, and he even canceled going to a hockey game to celebrate my birthday, which made me feel genuinely special. For Christmas, he even bought me a very expensive gift, and I soon found myself falling for him, completely infatuated. It was strange for me because I had never really felt that way about anyone, and I was certain he did not feel the same. I am significantly different from his type, which is slender with a prominent backside. I am a heavier-set girl. I am not unattractive, but I am certainly not his type. However, I have so much love in my heart for him that I was willing to suppress those feelings as much as I could. The thought of losing him and our friendship would be devastating for me, and that is not his fault. He came into my life during a very critical time, and I did the same for him. There is definitely some trauma bonding there, but that is a discussion for another time. Here is a small additional detail. Rick does not particularly like one of the people invited, so I informed him that we would hang out for a few hours before heading to a bar later. He agreed. That Saturday afternoon arrived and it started off a bit awkwardly. There was some dry conversation, a charcuterie board, and some India pale ales. Rick and I had not eaten all day, so the alcohol affected us more quickly than expected. It was not even 4:30 p.m. and we were both very tipsy. The rest of the evening began to loosen up and we just kept consuming drinks. He was also being quite touchy-feely with me. While that is not unusual for him, it was taken up a notch. He pulled me by my waist into his body, held my waist through my belt loops, and buried his head in my neck. He kept telling me I smelled good as I was wearing the perfume he had bought me for Christmas. I did not refuse any of it. Honestly, it felt wonderful to be touched that way. There was some couch cuddling with his hands quite high on my thighs and everything. Sarah and another friend commented that we needed to find a private space. We repeatedly told them to leave us alone and continued. Each time I stumbled a bit, he would grab me by the waist or my lower back. At some point, I fell on the floor and he picked me up, but then he stumbled slightly himself. It was genuinely so much fun in the moment. He is always a very touchy person with me, so I didn't even consider it romantically at first. However, it definitely reignited some feelings I had shelved away. In the end, we took an Uber back to his place to drop off our things before going back out, although we were both intoxicated enough that, looking back, it was likely that we would not have been served. We went into his backyard for a smoke before leaving. Neither of us had a lighter and were heading back to his basement to grab one. On the way, I offered him my vape, and before I realized it, he had grabbed my wrist and his tongue was inside my mouth. It was honestly sloppy and messy, the only way to describe it. A lot was said, and the only reason it did not progress further was that we did not have a condom. Honestly, I am glad it did not go further, but wow, it felt amazing, one of the best 45 minutes of my life. I should have left right after, but I did not. We went back inside his house and played a game together. 2 hours into playing, he started talking about a girl he had met at the bar the week before and wanted to sleep with. That took the wind right out of me. I was slowly sobering up at that point and had already concluded that it was nothing more than drunken horniness, but it still hurt. He ended up falling asleep not long after, and I gathered my things and left. The only way I have managed to cope with this situation is by pretending it never occurred. It truly hurt, and honestly, I cried about it for a day or two. I felt so disrespected, but I also felt like the friendship was over, which was what really tore me apart. Losing him as a friend was so detrimental to me that I had a full-blown panic attack. I sulked over it for a few days, but soon after we resumed our conversation, and it was as if it had never happened. Surprisingly, I am genuinely okay with it. It is strange, but any romantic feelings I had seemed to have just vanished. It is honestly as if they were never there. I am not sure if I am simply very good at forgetting and forgiving, but I got over it surprisingly quickly. However, the few people in my inner circle who are aware of what happened still make comments like, "Oh, do not mention him or she will start crying," or "You should cut ties with him and stop talking to him." Each time I hang out with him alone or bring him to a group gathering, I feel as though I am being looked at as if I am clinically insane. The kiss was consensual, that is all there is to it. He simply made a very insensitive comment. This has led to a small argument between Erin and me. She is completely convinced that I should cut him out of my life. I explained to her how I felt and stated that it was not meant to be anything serious. I still plan on discussing it with him eventually because I did feel disrespected by his comment, and he needs to be made aware of that. However, he is still working through the relationship trauma from the previous year. I am taking it slow and step by step, not just for his benefit but for mine. I do not want to push him into a corner because that would only lead to an upset. We are approaching 2 months now and Aaron believes I have waited too long. I am a very passive person and it takes significant time for me to build the courage to address these issues. I realize I cannot make Aaron understand that, but it is incredibly frustrating. Nevertheless, things have returned to normal now and everything is genuinely good. Aaron cares for me and I know that, but have I managed this situation incorrectly? Realistically, it happened and that is it. I genuinely do not believe there is anything I could have done differently. This is somewhat trivial, and I did not intend to share this on Reddit, but everyone in my social circle communicates with one another, making it challenging to discuss with real-life friends. I just needed a moment to vent. Thank you, Reddit.